Ljubo Louis Batistich. He was born on the 16th of August 1909 in the village of Lumbarda on the island of Korčula of what was Yugoslavia, now Croatia, and died young at the age of 52 in Sydney, Australia. Now, every family has their story.
And we can trace ours as far back as 1648, a story of hope, hardship, perseverance and beauty. Ljubo was the youngest child of Frano and Marija Batistich. He was one of 8 brothers and had 2 sisters. Marta was the eldest, born in 1886, followed by Ivan, Ante, Nikola, Frano, Rocco, Marko, Stipe and Jovica.
Marko died when he was a baby, and Stipe died in the army in World War I. Frano was born in 1859 when modern-day Croatia was under Austro-Hungarian rule. He was very strict on his sons and was a recognised community leader who on important occasions welcomed visiting dignitaries to Lumbarda wearing white gloves. He died of stomach cancer soon after Ljubo was born. There was a large age difference between Ljubo and his older brothers, so he was in the true sense the baby brother. World War I was a time of great poverty and hardship, and the whole of the upstairs of the house was filled with pumpkins, their only food. The Batistich land couldn't support the 6 brothers, so all of his older brothers had left home by the time he was 13.
Ivan emigrated to San Francisco in the US in the early 1920s and soon after bought out his 3 brothers Ante, Frano and Rocco to the US. Nikola went to Australia in 1923 and worked on the southern pylon of the Sydney Harbour Bridge as a stonemason.
He went to the US in 1932 to join his brothers. The brothers worked hard, started families and created successful small businesses in San Francisco. The brothers in the US decided that one brother should go back to Lumbarda to look after their ageing mother. Nikola drew the short straw and went back to Lumbarda. Jovica went to live in the US and married in 1938. Meanwhile, Marija Tomasic was born in 1920 in Smokvica on the island of Korčula and grew up with her sister Rose. She was later to journey to Australia to meet her true love.
When Ljubo was 16, he left home, just as his brothers had done before him, looking to create a new life. But immigration to the United States had ceased by 1924, so he left Lumbarda and the Batistich family home to emigrate to Australia to join his brother Nikola. He travelled to Sydney with people from Europe looking to create a new beginning on the Oronsay. His journey started in Italy and travelled through the Suez Canal and over the Indian Ocean onto Australia, landing in Sydney on the 31st of March 1926.
In Sydney, he was briefly reunited with his brother Nikola. Despite the building of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, work was hard to find. The Depression was starting to take grip and work was hard to come by, especially for a new arrival, so he went on to Cairns in search of farming work. He found work in Edge Hill near Cairns as a cane cutter.
Cane cutting was done by hand in the early days in terrible heat and high humidity. He was a long way from the beautiful shores of Lumbarda. He worked very hard in those early days in Cairns to create a better future. He even sent a photo of himself working in the cane fields to his mother, where he wrote on the back of the photo, "To dear mother, see how I suffer from your hard-working son, Ljubo."
Looking for a better opportunity, he moved to Dimbula on the Atherton Tablelands in the late 1930s and share farmed with Tony Tomasic growing tobacco. In 1938, he was best man for James Tomasic, who wed Dorothy Downey, and the wedding was reported in the Cairns Post 31st of March 1938. And on the 16th of December 1939, he signed his life away, marrying Mary Tomasic.
In early 1940, and during World War II, he and his new wife went to Sydney by boat, searching for better work and to start a new life in the city. They rented this terrace in Paddington for 5 months. But Ljubo could only find part-time work, which was not enough to enable them to start a family. So Ljubo and Mary returned to Cairns and he went back to work cutting cane at Edge Hill. He was always happy and his smile lit up the room. He had presents, and dressed well on the few special occasions.
Their first son, named after his brothers John Royden, was born in Cairns in October 1940. He was their firstborn and only son. Two beautiful daughters followed. Linda, born in 1943 in Innisfail, and Frances was born in Mareeba on Christmas Day 1945.
Now his family was complete with John, Linda and Frances. He worked very hard for his family, and in 1 year cleared 9 acres of large trees on his father-in-law's farm with the help of 2 horses. He was generous. In 1944 he donated £15 in a collection in aid of the Yugoslav army.
The whole family moved to Sydney in 1946, settling on the northern beaches. Ljubo worked for Mr. Orlich in Warriewood, growing tomatoes. Another move was made to a farm in Maxwell Street, Mona Vale, owned by Mr. Cronje. They bought this farm of 7 acres and then sold half. Ljubo cleared the farm of trees and built glass houses and grew tomatoes.
They grew tomatoes for market and had their own vegetable garden and many animals. There was a cow, a sheep called Jingle Bells, a dog called Butch, a ginger cat and chickens. Life was hard for the Batistich family living in Maxwell Street, as tomato prices at the city markets were often low. But the family were happy going for picnics to Shelley Beach at Manly with cousin Vicky and Joe Morrissey, and making regular weekend trips by bus and train to visit Auntie Rose and Uncle Joe at Bonnyrigg. Then on the 29th of July 1949 he was naturalised as an Australian citizen.
He was a devoted husband to his wife Mary and proud and loving father to John, Linda and Frances. When he greeted relatives and friends, he smothered them in a big, affectionate bear hug. He had an outgoing personality and was charming and generous to everyone he knew.
In 1956, he bought a new 2-toned cream and maroon Holden FJ sedan, which was his pride and joy. He loved his new car. It was a symbol that he was reaping the rewards of years of hard work, and he gave special joy to the family. In those days, a new car was considered a luxury item. The new car enabled the trip to Bonnyrigg to be made in one day, usually on a Sunday.
In 1957, he made a trip to Yugoslavia to see his mother, who was 96. She requested that he come to see her now, as she couldn't wait to see him before she passed away. She hadn't seen him for 31 years. He was very happy to see his mother, who was frail and confined to her bedroom upstairs. When the rest of the family were welcoming him downstairs, he went upstairs, picked his mother up in his strong arms and carried her downstairs and danced with her around the dining room. He wanted his mother to enjoy the celebration with him. This was a memorable trip because 6 months after his visit, his mother died. He also travelled to San Francisco for a brief emotional reunion with his 4 brothers and sister Jovica, whom he hadn't seen for 36 years.
When he flew home from America and approached Sydney over the scenic northern beaches, he was very happy to be home and said the northern beaches are the best place in the world to live. He was a bald, short, stocky man, with a barrel chest, with large hands and strong arms. He was a man of honesty. He was a good friend and mentor. He loved the music of Mario Lanza and reading the Phantom comics his son brought home. And when John bought a black and white Pi TV with one of his first paychecks, he could not get enough. He loved Western movies and shows like Rawhide. He loved watching World Championship Wrestling, especially when Mario Milano was in action. He enjoyed smoking Champion Ruby Ready Rub tobacco and rolling his own cigarettes. And after a hard day's work, he would relax with a nip of muscat. He loved going out with his family and dancing, but he was happiest at home with his family. On Saturday afternoon, the 16th of December 1961, Ljubo Batistich died prematurely of a massive heart attack. He was only 52 years old. It was also exactly 22 years after he got married. He said to Mary before he died, "We have been married 22 years today, and you have made me very happy." Later that day he passed away. He was a dear and loving husband and father who is sadly missed.
So from a young boy in Lombarda whose father died young, who grew up as part of a large family, to a young man with a joy for life and ambition for a new life,
to a wedding to his beloved Mary, his work in North Queensland, his life in Sydney, to the growth and development of his family, and the love of his children John, Linda and Francis. There were tough times, but there were also many beautiful moments together.
he has left a legacy that will never be forgotten. He had 3 children, 7 grandchildren that he did not live to meet, and now 13 great-grandchildren.
We owe him a great deal. His choices and his work have defined our lives, and for this we are eternally grateful.